Hi, and welcome to week 2 of Gentle Essaying. I'm uploading this on Wednesday, so I want you to know that so that when I talk about today, tomorrow, next week, you're able to know what it is that I'm talking about and to orient yourselves in time. So today, you're all sending me the essay that you worked on for the first week, and I will send them out tomorrow morning once I have everybody's to the individual critique groups. I'm sorry for the little bit of a mess figuring out what the best way to do the critique groups was going to be. Again, Google Groups changed the way it functions. At sort of the last minute, it downgraded some functions, which I don't really understand, but maybe it has to do with somebody they bought or something. And so it didn't work anymore the way that it was intended. Hopefully these email groups, which are the simplest way to do this, will go off without a hitch. I will send everybody Word documents of everybody else's work, and you guys will just hit reply all to send your feedback. All right, so let's start talking about what we're going to look at this week. Last week, we looked at the idea of synecdoche. I think I'm getting better. Synecdoche, in terms of looking at something as a part, right? An individual item to stand in for everything. This week, we're looking at the way looking deeply into a single moment can help us get to a universal truth. And we're going to look at 3 of my very favorite brevity essays for this. The first one, Chop Suey by Ira Sukunuran, examines a moment when he is out with his mother and experiences what it's like, not just to experience racism himself, which is a thing that he had already experienced, but to see adult men talk to his mother in this way, and to also see her response and see a strength that he may not have known was there before. And I really think that this is an essay that gets us to the question, which is going to be our central question for this week, of how do you move from something that is an anecdote to something that tells the reader something about the larger world. This is the greatest challenge when I'm teaching college students creative nonfiction, people who are just starting out, who have a hard time grasping the difference between here's this thing that happened to me that is interesting to those people who know me, and I'm relating it in the same way that I might tell it to a friend, versus here is this thing that I witnessed, which I think is one of the key differences. And in it, I saw something that I think said something about the larger world, and I want to tell it to you in a way that will hopefully let you see that thing too. The second essay that we're going to read is the least gentle of the essays that we will read this summer, but it just does such a good job with this, I thought I needed to include it. And it is Diane Seuss's I Hoisted Them, Those Two Drug Dealers. I think that's what they were. I think I inserted those in that title that isn't there. But it's an essay that looks at one particularly difficult moment and admittedly goes into the aftermath of that moment and brings in some flashbacks in order to ground that moment. But to tell us something really true and difficult about what it is to be the mother of an addict. And I think it can only function the way it does because of its lyricism, which allows her to defeat our expectation of a linear narrative and to also make it about this feeling she is having rather than the experiences that are evoking this feeling. So I want you to pay attention in that one to the way in which lyricism functions to help decenter the story and instead focus on the experience, which is a thing that, well, I don't think many of us, and certainly I will never be able to do this as well as Diane Seuss does. I mean, she was a runner-up for the Pulitzer in poetry a couple of years ago, so I bow down and just say, yay that she does it this well. I still think we can look at it and see what she does and take some cues from how she's so successfully able to do this. And finally, we're going to look at Melissa Delbridge's Our New Idiot, another one of my favorite essays, and particularly for this one comes the closest to me of reading like a parable or maybe a Zen koan. If you don't know what a koan is, it's like a riddle, but not really a riddle, or a joke, but not really a joke, that has 7 layers of meaning, and you're supposed to contemplate them until you find all of them. And this is a very brief anecdote set in what was the place that we all went for lunch when I was a freshman at the University of Alabama. So I have that sort of cool special connection to this essay, but I think I'd love it anyway. And the way in which everybody underestimates Hardy, who is the person who busses the table there, and what it means to the author when she realizes how they've been underestimating him, and sort of the dehumanizing element of that, I think, and who it is who that means is maybe an idiot. And I really think that essay does a great job of being largely an anecdote, and then just having that little thing at the end where the author wakes up and realizes something. I'm usually against the epiphany, but if an epiphany is tiny enough, in this case, not here's how I need to change my whole life, but just here's this bad assumption I've been making, I think that it really can work. And excuse me, I'm probably telling getting over a cold. And then I think it really can work. And I think that's one of the things that Melissa does so brilliantly here, is that she walks us through this amusing anecdote only to bring us to someplace unexpected in the end. I also encourage you to pay attention to how she uses dialogue here and tone in order to convey southernness. This is a side lesson, but one of my greatest pet peeves in the essay is when people work with I dialect. And I think the way that you get around I dialect, which is writing things out as though the way they would be pronounced by the person who's speaking versus the way that they are spelled, is to use diction rather than accent. And she does a really good job here of using diction rather than accent. And if you want to have a longer conversation about I dialect, let me know and we can talk about it. I will say my biggest problem with it is that, of course, it has its roots in the exaggerated I dialect writing of Joel Chandler Harris, who wrote The Song of the South and captured all the Uncle Remus stories that were appropriated slave stories, and in which he intentionally wrote in this high I dialect in order to further dehumanize the people from whom he'd taken the stories. So not a great guy. And there are arguments that get made about I dialect that say we should divorce it from its history, but I at least think until we have better representation across publishing, that it just isn't time, and we're not entitled to make that decision. So there's my weird mini side lecture about I dialect, vernacular, and diction. All right, so I look forward to hearing your responses to these essays. This week, you're going to be writing a single moment that leads us out to a greater truth, and I look forward to reading those essays too. Don't hesitate to contact me. By email is best. The course shell I don't see as quickly because I check it maybe 4 or 5 times a day, whereas I check email compulsively because I'm one of those people. So the fastest way to reach me is email if you have a question, and I look forward to working with you this week too. Thank you, and bye-bye.